Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to Canada 2020 for inviting me here today to speak with all of you. Canada 2020 has been a strong generator of progressive policy since its inception, and it's always great to participate in these events. Thank you all for being here as well, and I would be remiss not to mention a few of my colleagues who stayed over after the House rose. Our host MP, the MP for Ottawa, Vanier Morel-Bélanger, who's here with us today. Also from Ottawa, David McGuinty, Ottawa South. My indefatigable deputy leader is always around to step in case I falter. No luck this time, Ralph. Ralph Goodale, who's in from Saskatchewan. And one MP who had a very big week last week with our democratic reform package, our Member of Parliament from Bonavista, Grand Falls, Windsor, Newfoundland, Scott Sims, who was our democratic reform critic. And of course, thank you, Tim, for your kind introduction. I love this time of year in Ottawa, that brief period between the blowing snow and the sweltering heat that we call June. There's always a sense of excitement in the air as Canada Day approaches. The politicians leave, people from all over the country pour in to celebrate their country's birthday. South of the border, and indeed across the street at the U.S. Embassy, similar activities are underway. Americans pause for picnics and fireworks, hot dogs and baseball games. The proximity of our two celebrations on the calendar ought to give us cause to reflect on how much more we share in common with our friends to the south. We think of ourselves as young countries, new even. Yet Canada will be 148 this year. The United States, 239. We have a long history together, a history that, of course, extends back far before either of our country's official birth dates. For our American cousins, the relationship is consequential. For us, it is often definitional. Prime ministers and governments are commonly and rightly judged for how they foster that relationship for the greater common good. From John A. Macdonald's deft management of fishing rights to Mike Pearson's negotiation of the Auto Pact, from free trade to abstention of the from the Iraq War, management of Canada-US relations is among the largest markers by which our history remembers our leaders. Et c'est ainsi que les choses devraient être. Les relations canado-américaines ont changé au fil des ans. Les Canadiennes et les Canadiens n'ont jamais autant cru en eux-mêmes. Les gens de ma génération en particulier ne voient pas de contradiction entre le fait d'avoir une identité nationale forte et une interdépendance économique qui nous rend tous plus prospères. Indeed, the Canada-US relationship is no less important to us today than it was 100 years ago. A former prime minister, and not the one you think, once said to me that the prime minister has three big responsibilities: grow the economy, unify the country, and successfully manage our relationship with the United States. As with most sweeping statements, you can quibble with that one, but there is a deep and important truth embedded in it. Successful prime ministers get the big things right. And Canada's relationship with the United States is, beyond the shadow of a doubt, one of the biggest. Here's how another prime minister once put it. Given our common values and the political, economic, and security interests that we share with the United States, there is now no more important foreign policy interest for Canada than maintaining the ability to exercise effective influence in Washington so as to advance unique Canadian policy objectives. That was actually Stephen Harper back in 2003. So, at the end of the Harper decade, let us judge the Prime Minister by his own yardstick and ask a few simple questions. Is Canada's relationship with the United States better or worse than it was when Stephen Harper took office? Does Canada have more or less influence in Washington than we did when Harper became Prime Minister? And what kind of success has Harper had in exercising effective influence in Washington to advance unique Canadian policy objectives? I believe the answers to those questions are worse, less, and little. Je crois que la cause profonde de ces échecs est davantage liée à l'approche diplomatique de M. Harper qu'à un affaiblissement des intérêts communs qui unissent nos pays. Nous n'avons jamais tant eu à gagner d'avoir des relations fortes et harmonieuses avec les États-Unis. Malheureusement, M. Harper et ses ministres conservateurs ont teinté leur politique étrangère du style conflictuel et hyper-partisan qui est devenu leur marque de commerce. Ils ont bien mal analysé le nouveau contexte dans lequel nous évoluons et ont raté d'importantes occasions de collaborer avec les États-Unis afin de trouver des solutions aux grands enjeux tels que les changements climatiques. It's hard to remember now that it even happened, but one of President Obama's first acts of foreign policy was to sign a cooperation agreement with Canada on energy and the environment. Harper has had more than 6 years to build on that opportunity and to build that opportunity into real progress on an issue that will define our economic success as a nation. Yet, all would agree that we are no further ahead on that than we were on the one day that President Obama spent here in Ottawa. Now, everybody knows I have consistently supported the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. Opening global markets to Canadian goods and resources is a fundamental responsibility of the Prime Minister. However, I have also said from the beginning of my leadership that KXL would never be built unless we put strong environmental policy in place. Specifically, I said that until we found a way to responsibly and effectively price carbon pollution, the Americans would delay, defer, and eventually decline. The simple fact is that in 2015, pretending that we have to choose between the economy and the environment is as harmful as it is wrong at home and abroad. It's not just a good idea to have sound environmental policy, it's good business. Nous le savons tous. M. Harper a adopté une approche différente, une approche qui estime que le développement économique et la responsabilité environnementale ne peuvent être réconciliés, une approche qui est tout simplement sidérante. Plutôt que de travailler de façon constructive à chercher des solutions aux enjeux les plus importants, M. Harper a démontré qu'il avait une vision étroite. Le Premier ministre du Canada s'est rendu à New York et a tenté de forcer publiquement la main du président des États-Unis pour que celui-ci appuie sa vision. Et s'il refusait, qu'à cela ne tienne, ce ne serait que partie remise avec le prochain président. Now, occasionally, we have had frosty relationships between the Prime Minister and the President. Everybody knows that my father and President Nixon weren't exactly the closest of friends. Kennedy and Diefenbaker definitely weren't fishing buddies. But it is hard to imagine any Prime Minister in the history of this country pulling Harper's fruitless stunt. Nor was it a one-off tactic. From the famous no-brainer comment of 2011 to the endless stream of ministers who went to the U.S. to lecture the Obama administration, this was Harper's strategy. And it is his failure. In the end, it's not really about Keystone. It's about judgment. It's about the narrowness that allowed one project in one industry, however large and important the project and industry, to define one of the most positive and prosperous bilateral relationships the world has ever known. All of us, Canadians and Americans alike, are the poorer for it. The problem is not just Harper's antagonistic style of diplomacy. His hyper-partisan approach also means he is unable to work constructively with people who don't share his ideology, whether that person is President of the United States or Premier of Ontario. Does anyone doubt that Harper would have taken a different approach with a Republican in the White House? Let me be crystal clear on this point. I'm proud to lead a party that has worked well with presidents of both parties to advance our shared interests. Because we Liberals understand something very important that Harper and his party have forgotten. Canada's relationship with the United States must transcend partisanship. Canadians and Americans have important differences, but we are cut from the same cloth. We have the longest, most peaceful, and mutually beneficial relationship of any two countries since the birth of the nation-state. We have known since the beginning that we are in this together, that we share the same values, the same origins, and the same space, that we face many of the same challenges, and that, at our best, we are all better off when we tackle them together. We've shown this to be particularly true on security and defense. Since the late 1950s, Canadians and Americans have worked side by side in NORAD, protecting our continental airspace. And we have been the closest of allies overseas for even longer, including in NATO. In both cases, and others since, we realized that our concerns were better addressed together than alone, and that an active, engaged Canada in the world is good for us and also good for the United States. Grâce à notre efficacité diplomatique, nous avions obtenu un siège à des conseils mondiaux de première importance, dont le Conseil de sécurité des Nations unies. Nous avions ainsi pu jouer un rôle primordial dans le cadre d'initiatives cruciales, comme celle visant à mettre fin à l'apartheid et à interdire les mines antipersonnelles. Of course, diplomacy is easy when you're working with people who agree with you. It's most challenging, but most urgently needed, when the common interest requires you to put differences aside to build solutions to shared problems. Diplomacy reflects our core Canadian values. We are, after all, a nation of diverse people living peacefully together. It is part of what makes us Canadian. So now, we need real change when it comes to how we conduct our relationship with the United States if we are to continue our past success into the future. Much of this change has to do with style and approach, but there's an equally important change that we must absorb and reflect on in Canada-US policy. Allow me to put it bluntly for a moment. Canada's special relationship with the United States is not automatic. Like any strong relationship, you have to put a lot of work into it and continually earn it. There is nothing preordained about our influence or value in Washington's eyes. Policy that ignores this basic fact will fail. Les États-Unis, tout comme l'Angleterre au 19e siècle, n'ont pas d'amis ou d'alliés permanents. Ils ont plutôt des intérêts permanents. Ce n'est pas avec des menaces et un esprit combatif que nous aurons une véritable influence à Washington. Nous devons voir les choses dans leur ensemble, s'assurer de vraiment comprendre la nature profonde des intérêts américains. We have to understand where our unique national interests and theirs overlap, and we need to focus relentlessly for the long term on making progress in those areas. I've already spoken about one of those areas, climate change and clean prosperity. Indeed, it cannot be stressed enough how fundamental the global energy revolution currently underway truly is. The American economy is adjusting rapidly to take advantage of that change. Its public and private sector leaders are investing deeply in bold strategies to position the U.S. as a leader in this brave new world. Under Stephen Harper, Canada has not kept up. Now, I share the view that we need to diversify and globalize our approach to trade and foreign investment. We need to do more to strengthen our ties with burgeoning global markets in Africa and Asia, for example. However, we should not take our eye off the ball closer to home. I am not one of those who holds a pessimistic view of the U.S. economy's future. The decline and fall of U.S. growth is the geopolitical equivalent of Sasquatch, often reported but never verified. Free access to the American market is an unparalleled blessing for Canada's economy. It supports 3/4 of our trade, and most importantly, millions and millions of good quality, middle-class jobs for Canadian families. We can never take that for granted. A large part of that is understanding the U.S. context as Americans see it, not as we wish they would. There are many examples I could use, from NATO to the future of the Arctic, but I want to focus the remainder of my time on an issue that gets far too little attention: Mexico and its fundamental impact on Canada-U.S. relations. Mexico is now an equal or greater strategic preoccupation in Washington than Canada. That basic fact cannot be wished away. As with the United States, Harper's approach to relations with Mexico has been belligerent and borderline churlish. Aside from the overall neglect that has characterized their policy, the Conservatives' changes regarding visa requirements surprised and needlessly embarrassed the Mexicans, and quite frankly, should have been reversed long ago. Mexico is an important economy with a burgeoning energy industry and a young workforce. By some estimates, its economy will rival Britain and France in the next 15 years. Its middle class is one of the world's fastest growing. Crucially, it is the only emerging market in the world to commit to reducing emissions that cause climate change. Il ne faut pas pour autant minimiser les défis auxquels le Mexique fait face. Leurs problèmes sont réels et bien connus, et nous devrions offrir notre aide en tant que partenaires pour les résoudre. Dans bien des domaines, les Canadiens possèdent le savoir-faire nécessaire pour répondre aux besoins du Mexique, de la construction d'institutions publiques à l'organisation de services de police civile, en passant par le développement d'infrastructures. Le Mexique offre des occasions de faire évoluer nos relations et nos économies. Nous devons les saisir. Qu'est-ce que cela veut dire pour le Canada et les relations canado-américaines? À mon avis, cela implique que nous devons de nouveau voir ces relations dans un contexte continental. Nous devons voir dans l'avenir de l'Amérique du Nord notre propre avenir. American leaders have long seen Mexico's problems and Mexico's progress as their own. It's time we understood that the road to real influence in Washington is to help solve big problems in areas of deep shared interest. Harper just doesn't get it. His last contribution to North American diplomacy was to cancel a trilateral summit with the leaders of Mexico and the United States last winter. It was, sadly, all too representative of the Harper decade. So, what needs to be done? First, we need to restore cooperation. As former U.S. Secretary of State George Shultz once said, managing Canada-U.S. relations is like tending a garden. The way to keep weeds from overwhelming you is to deal with them constantly and in the early stages. The Prime Minister needs to communicate regularly with the President, whomever he or she may be. We don't have to always agree, but we do have to talk. But the Canada-U.S. relationship also needs to fit into a broader North American context. That's why, as an immediate first step, our Liberal government would work to lift the Mexican visa requirement, and it's why our government would also offer to reschedule and host a new trilateral summit with the United States and Mexico. Second, we need to push for the next major step in the history of North American partnership: Clean Energy and Environment Agreement. North America can and should be the world's most efficient and responsible energy producer. From Canada's reserve of renewable energy exports like hydroelectricity, to the opening of Mexican energy markets, to revolutionary developments in the U.S. energy industry, together we have an opportunity to position North America for a cleaner energy future. A key result of any agreement should be continental coordination of climate change mitigation policies and alignment of international negotiating positions. Third, a Liberal government would seek to re-energize cooperation on reducing impediments to trade and commerce between our countries, including by improving border infrastructure, streamlining cargo inspection, and making the movement of people easier. An efficient North American economy is vital for Canadian prosperity and for creating good jobs. Finally, we need to treat the relationship we have with the seriousness it deserves. At home, this means creating a cabinet committee to oversee and manage our relationships with the United States and making sure that our ambassador to Washington is at that table on a regular basis. And abroad, we need to challenge our diplomats in the U.S. to be creative in their approach to the relationship, and we need to give them the mandate and the resources they need, and which the Conservatives have cut, to do their jobs well. In the U.S., as elsewhere, all politics is local. To better understand these local realities and to ensure that Canada's voice is heard there, we need to have people on the ground in as many critical regions and communities as possible. These changes are not complicated. They are practical. They are also vital to our economic success. To implement, they will require a vision for a better brand of Canadian relations with our most important and vital trading partners. Le Canada a toujours compris que d'être pleinement et résolument engagé à l'international est important non seulement pour notre succès, mais pour le succès des autres. Nous sommes un pays qui a énormément à offrir. Il est temps qu'on reprenne notre place. Diplomacy is often referred to as an art for a reason. It takes time, practice, skill, creativity, and patience, as well as a willingness to admit mistakes. For generations, Canadians have been masters of this art. We've had to be. And until now, Prime Minister after Prime Minister understood how important it was that we make it work. Real change is needed in the way we manage our relationship with the United States, in the way we see our place on this continent, and in the broader world. The Harper decade has been defined by the absurd spectacle of a hectoring, belligerent Canada. It's time for it to come to an end. It's time for real change. Merci beaucoup.